A lot of people like wait to get asked to start training. I trained every day. Like when I got my black stripe, I trained every day as if I was going to get asked tomorrow. And I just trained like, well, he might ask me today, so I better make sure that like if I get asked to test tomorrow, I better be ready. So I trained every single day as if I was going to be testing tomorrow. Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Off the Mat. My name is Josh Dumoulin, and this is
Nicole Stratichuk.
And we have a really special episode here, and one that I'm really excited to talk about because, well, we just recently had black belt testing, and it was a big event, of course, at our school, but it's a big moment in a martial artist's life, in an individual's life, to participate or do a black belt test, to have put in the work and everything. And we wanted to come on here and we wanted to talk all about the black belt test that we recently just had in
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. So in May, right? Early May?
That's right.
On Mother's Day.
And in this group in particular, there was quite a few young black belts.
Yeah, this was our largest group of junior black belts that we had going. So it was really exciting. So like, just to get into it, we had 7 people that tested for black belt on Sunday, May
14th?
14th.
13th?
Just recently here. Now I'm trying to think of the date. When was Mother's Day? 14th?
I'm not sure. It was 13th or 14th, somewhere there.
Yeah, something like that. It's right after Nationals. That's right. So we had the black belt testing, and I don't know, we wanted to kind of go through the whole thing of the black belt test, what was involved in it. And we even wanted to talk a little bit about what our black belt test was like, because, well, we had to do it too. We had to go through it. And, you know, we've often talked about it. And even though we got our black belts in the same style of Taekwondo, our experience of the black belt test is different. The students' experience that we gave them is different than the ones that we both had. So it's interesting to see that even though the style and what we're watching for and the base of what they're graded on is the same that we did, there's a lot of stuff that was very, very different from what I got to do, from what you got to do, and from what these 7 individuals got to do. And even in the course of my teaching the last 15 years where I've been able to grade, I've gotten to grade a lot of people for their black belt, and my testing has even evolved over the years to something a little bit different. And I am sure it will continue to evolve. So why don't we just get into what your black belt testing was like?
All right. That was so many years ago. I have been a black belt for 24 years. I've been a black belt. Isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. That's such a long time ago. So let's rewind 24 years ago. My black belt experience, I knew that I was testing for my black belt months in advance. So that date had been set out and planned. And so I had lots of time to mentally prepare, and get ready for that date. I remember the biggest thing that I worried about for my black belt test was board breaking. So in my school where I trained, we didn't do any board breaking until you tested for your black belt. So I had never broken a board until the day of my black belt test. Well, let's rewind that for a bit. I was really worried about that piece. And I remember my dad, he went to the hardware store and got some boards, or got a plank of wood and cut it. And then he made me break a board at home in our garage so that I could know that I could do it. And so he just kind of like set it up at an angle on the step, and all I did was like stomp my foot into the board. But that action, it just gave me a little boost of confidence, that knowing that I was going to go into my black belt test and I was going to be able to break a board. Now, that little board break in the garage wasn't an example of what I had to do in my black belt test, but that feeling of confidence really helped, I know, going into it. So that was a big fear for me going into my black belt test. I felt really prepared with everything else. So like patterns and sparring, of course, and like the self-defense pieces and the theory questions. Like I was ready. Like I just felt like I was so ready for that. But it was the board breaking that I was really nervous about. So anyway, I had lots of time to prepare for my black belt test. The day of the black belt test came and I did well. Like I trained really hard as a kid, right? And I always train hard now too, but I just was well prepared. And so the test, I don't think really could have gone any better for me. I felt good about my performance. And in the end, I did earn my black belt. But the interesting thing about my experience too is I tested for my black belt, but then we didn't get our results for it was like 4 or 6 weeks after. So
yeah, that's something that like is really interesting. Like we didn't do that. Like when that's something really unique for you. Like that we've talked about there is like the time afterwards, how long it took you just to get the results to find out whether or not you did pass.
Yeah. And
passed.
Like I finished the test and I felt really good about it. Like I believed I had passed the test, but there was still like this time that goes by that you're like, oh, maybe I didn't. Like maybe I, like you start to like doubt yourself a little bit. And so that, 4 to 6 weeks after the test, it was, nerve wracking, I guess. And like we would, still come to train for that 4 to 6 weeks waiting for the black belt results. And yeah, it was just it was just a hard, interesting time anyway to wait that long. But then certainly found out that we passed and felt really good about that, right? And when you earn your black belt, it's something that you've worked so hard for, right? Like it doesn't happen in a day, like, right. And it doesn't happen in a year.
It all comes down to that one day, which is interesting, but it's a process of years.
Yeah,
of
like
work.
You've just put in so much of your time and sweat and tears and blood, right? Like you've put everything, a lot into this black belt test. So really quite a special day when you earn that. And then I think about like my parents too. My parents put so much time and effort into me earning my black belt. So it was, it's really a really cool day when you earn your black belt. The pride is just overwhelming, right? You feel really proud and you can feel like I could feel my parents being proud of me, right? And so, like that, just the pride and excitement when you actually earn your black belt. Because when you first start martial arts, and in my case, Taekwondo, like the black belt seems so far away, right? Like it's so far out there. So when you finally achieve it, you're like, wow, I did it, right? And it's just, it's exciting to reach such a big goal. So
how many people were at yours?
Like other testers?
Yep.
Honestly, I can't even remember. There wasn't that many. There was maybe 3 or 4 of us. Yeah.
And then family members that would have been watching or something like that?
Yeah, I remember there are lots of people watching actually. So it was... even compared to the test that we just ran here, we had 7 testers and we had quite a few friends and family. I would say there was even more spectators for our test. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I just remember there being lots of people there when we did the test, but I don't know. It was 24 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't.
Well, even in that day, like, and this is often something that we talk about with competitors and testers and everything because we've gone through it now is to kind of embrace the day because it goes by in such a blur that like I remember parts of my test, but like there is like so much that is just a blur. There's parts of like going to world championships that are just completely a blur.
And honestly, like, cause I'm a 5th degree black belt now, I feel like I have certain moments of the different tests. I don't know which test those moments came from.
Right.
So that's the hard thing about recalling my 1st degree black belt test is I feel like I have memories of testing, but I'm not actually sure if that was the 1st degree test or not. So, and it's just been, 24 years since that happened. I can't believe that.
Yeah.
Tell us about your test, because our experiences were
Yeah.
much different. We were chatting before. So
Yeah, no, so at that time, my dad had his school. So I was a black stripe at that time, and I just remember, for me, like, I didn't have a planned test day, so to speak. Like, it wasn't like, hey, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks, 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever, from now you're going to test. Like, there was no predetermined date in a way. My dad just kind of said, yeah, when you're ready, I'll ask you. So, like, I went with the approach, like, I took a very different approach. A lot of people, like, wait to get asked to start training. I trained every day. Like, when I got my black stripe, I trained every day as if I was going to get asked tomorrow. And I just trained like, well, he might ask me today, so I better make sure that, like, if I get asked to test tomorrow, I better be ready. So I trained every single day as if I was going to be testing tomorrow.
I really like that aspect of your test, actually, because, you know, even me recalling my black belt tests, there's certain things that, you know, I am kind of cramming, right? You know, different things I'm trying to remember or stick in my head. Whereas, like, doing it that way, it is, you have to constantly be on your toes and be ready to go, right? Like, yeah.
And that's just it.
Like
it was
that.
like, so ultimately when it came down to it, it was something like, again, like going back to it, like mine was, mine was over 20 years ago as well. So like exactly like what happened, but it was about a week. My dad came to me, he goes, okay, this weekend we're testing. And I was like, okay, well, I didn't panic because I just, like I said, I went into it with the attitude as if I was going to get asked that way. And so actually when it came down to it, like really thinking about it, I was like, oh man, I got a whole week. I didn't have like a day. Like in my mind, I thought I was going to get like a day to prepare.
Yeah.
You know, but I had already been preparing physically and mentally. Like that was the big part, was like mentally I was prepared that like I could get asked to test tomorrow and I just better be ready. So if I ain't ready, like that's on me.
I like
that's on me. That's not on my dad. Like my instructor, no.
Yeah.
I was at fault.
I like the mental preparation too, because like with all of my black belt tests, like all of my tests, I knew well in advance when the date was. And so, I was really good about preparing for that date and doing the mental preparation and doing, the physical preparation, all of that stuff. Like I was really good at that. But it was for a certain date. And then, the black belt test comes and you do it. And then some of those practices you would drop off because there's no longer a test. But some of those pieces would be really good to just like create daily habits out of, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just it. So there's like this whole element, but like that was something like, that was how my dad was. So like, that's something that like I'm thankful for in that, was just like, no, you get ready. If I ask you and you're not ready, that's your fault.
Yeah.
That's your fault.
Yeah.
And so like he was always hard on me that way. And I'm actually really grateful for that, because it, even though in my 20s I veered off and I wasn't always disciplined and I lost, there was that piece that like, I'm grateful for that, hey, like, well, if I ask you and you're not ready, this is your fault, not mine. I'm teaching you every day. You're coming to class. So if you're not ready, practicing and...
How old were you when this was?
I think 15.
15.
I think 15.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. I just remember my dad had his school. So already at that point, and I believe I was about 14, 15 when that happened. So I ended up getting that week's notice. We did the test. There was really nobody there.
Okay.
Like there was my dad, one of the other black belts, and I think my mom and maybe my sister.
And was anyone else testing for their black belt?
No, I was the only one at that time, because again, my dad had just opened his school.
Okay.
So we didn't really have anybody prepared for testing. Now, I think, 6 months later or something like that, there was a few more.
Okay.
And yeah, like even when it came down to the board breaking, it was just like, he would just be like, okay, grab 2 and you're going to do this. There was no predetermined, like, you get to do this. Like, it's so funny that like, which ones do I have to do? Which breaks do I have to do? Which thing do I put the board up and just break it? Like, do that. Like, that's just how I was brought up. Like, no, if I'm going to ask you to do a punch or a knife hand or a kick or whatever, that's what you should do. I didn't have to do a ton of breaks. Like I want to say 3 or 4 breaks, 4 or 5 breaks, something like that.
That's different for me too, because I know that I had to do, I think I had 2 breaks were predetermined, and then I kind of got to choose the third one.
Okay.
So I knew, I knew what my options were for that third one. So I had practiced one that I wanted to do at the test. So yeah, like I had lots of time to prepare for that, but I've had other black belt tests where it wasn't so prepared like that. Like it was more, you know, you're going to do this break, this break, this break, or, you know, here's the criteria. I only know it that day. And so if it's a jumping hand technique or a jumping foot or flying foot or whatever, like you just figured it out at that day.
And there's that part that I like about it, because you are going by instinct at that part, right? Because like really when you're training and putting that much time and energy and all of this stuff over the years, there is this element of like, you do know certain things, like you do know, you have the gut knowledge or experience or whatever to be able to perform. I feel like sometimes the time actually hurts you in a way, because you're like you tend to overthink it.
Yes.
Instead of just like, you know what, listen, I know the stuff that I need to know. Like I do know he's gonna ask me to do some patterns, some self-defense, some of this. What have we been training over the last? Okay, well, we're gonna get asked to do that. So just be prepared for that. Like, just do that. And if there's something that, like, you know, this is the thing too, is like, there was things I didn't expect to do in mine either. Like, you know, like, it's like, oh, you know, kicking up and down the floor was like a big thing for mine. We did that for, I don't know, like an hour and a half of just like constant kicking up and down the floor. You know, the board breaks. Actually, one funny story about one of my board breaks. My dad didn't have enough boards, and he goes, shoot, grab that one there. And it was a pre-broken board, like a board that somebody had broken, but didn't break down the middle.
Yeah.
No, it didn't break down the middle.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, so it, instead of being a 12-inch board, they instead of breaking it right in the middle and having 2, 6-inch boards, planks or pieces of broken, they broke it near the bottom. So it was like it narrowed it
like
down
a
to
9-inch board. Now.
Yeah, and it was just tiny. And I remember him, the guy holding it, putting it up there, and he goes, do a turning kick. And I remember placing my foot, and I had like this much room. I had like this, I probably wasn't talking into the mic at all there, but he puts the board up, and with his fingers spacing it and him holding the board and the actual amount of board I had to put my foot in, the entire ball of my foot into, there was room for like a centimeter on top and a centimeter on the bottom.
That's a good test of your your precision.
Well, that was the whole point. And then
yeah.
I think my dad was like, yeah, we just didn't have enough boards, but he was like, no, that's how he played it, was like, no, this is actually a test of how precise you can be. And so I remember placing my foot in there. He goes, better not hit his hand. And I was like, oh, geez.
Well, and that makes the board tougher too. Like when
when it's smaller, it's not as much room for flex and bend and cave in and snap. So I remember when I put my foot in there, I broke it, but I remember being really nervous because like when you break, we all know you're not trying to just like tap the board. You're trying to put your foot or hand through it. So when that happened, like you got to hit hard.
Yeah.
So I remember just trying to like smash as hard as I could and hopefully not hit his fingers. I maybe grazed them. I don't know, but I remember that was like, oh God. So that was the experience of mine. I did, however, though, find the results out that day. Like my dad was just like, hey. Like,
and you passed?
I passed. Yeah.
And how did you feel?
Of course, proud.
Of course.
Pride, joy, excitement. Yeah, like I had that unique...
That's a different experience too with your dad being your instructor and your tester.
And some people might listen to this and be like, wow, my dad was way harder on me.
I would believe
than
it.
anybody on the floor. And the unfortunate part about myself, given that, is I am also way harder on our boys in class than I am on anybody else. Mm-hmm. So like, there's that like, wow, that was your dad. Yeah, but my dad gave other people more notice. My dad, you know, there was certain things that like I had to do that, but I'm grateful for, like, I enjoy that. Now, what he probably did it because he didn't want it to appear like this is
Now,
easier.
Your sister is a black belt as well. Did she test around the same time, or
No,
that was
she
later?
Later. So I think
Okay.
she didn't test for a whole 2 years after because I had tested for my second with her for her first.
Okay.
And that one there was a whole handful of us, like at that time there, because now the school had grown a bit more. You know, we weren't as new. So there was, I want to say there was like 7, 8, 9 people that tested with us or something like that. I tested for my second, my sister tested for her first, and then we had a few others that tested with their seconds and some first degrees as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one was as well. Yeah. So we had more people for that one and more spectators, and yeah, it was a totally different.
And
totally
were your dad obviously and your mom were proud and excited
yeah, of
for
course.
you, of
Yeah, of
course.
course.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I felt that too. I didn't mention that, but yeah, my instructor was Mr. Murphy. If you're in the Lethbridge area, you definitely know who Mr. Murphy is. And yeah, I could just feel his pride too, right? Like, and now being on the other side, you know, we just had this black belt test. I understand more so that feeling of being the instructor and seeing students receive their black belt. Now, not quite, because these students that just tested 2 weeks ago, you've been teaching them from day one. And I know I am involved and stuff, but like firsthand, these are your students. And so it's cool. It's just really exciting to see it happen on this side as an instructor.
I think of it different though, because of especially how I think I am. Like I think a lot of instructors look at that, and I actually, it's really sad because a lot of people are like me. I did that. I taught them. And I believe that's a lack of confidence in a lot of instructors, is like, I tested them, I trained them. I look at the team of people that have been involved in them. Now, do I play a massive role in that?
Yes.
Sure, because I get to put a lot of this together,
Right.
and I get to bind all of the instructors with that instructor who made an influence on that one student be here if it wasn't for what we get to do back here. No. So I get to play that role, and I like that.
That's the cool thing, is like all of the black belts in our school in some way have helped these in massive ways, helped these kids. I say kids, but there was some adults that also test. There were 2 adults in this out of this 7, but we all played such a big role in their success 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So
and that's the way I think of it. So I don't actually think of it like as much as like, oh, I got to spend more time on the floor. Sure, maybe,
Yes.
but I believe the team and the number of people that come into it are way bigger.
Absolutely.
Than me.
I was just also kind of mentioning that, you know, during that time when those kids were getting started, I was also having babies and like in and out of the floor. So like I wasn't firsthand on the floor as much as you were with them, like fist to fist.
Right.
That's all I mean.
Yeah. And that's just it. Like I said, being able to be somebody who gets to combine a lot of these people around that get to support all of the people, that's really cool. Like I said, that is what I enjoy. I enjoy that people come together this way, and then being able to be the person who comes in and then say, like, you know, instill the discipline and the hard work and all of these things, and then have this team of people that are right behind me pushing them along and helping them up and carrying and like, hey, come with us, let's do this. So, but well, I don't know, like, talked a little bit about our experience in our black belts. Let's talk a little bit about this one, because again, it's we said earlier that, you know, it's evolved so much, and I talk to other people, other instructors, and it's like, well, we do this for ours, and we do that. Essentially, there's the same thing. We have our patterns, we have our sparring, we have our self-defense components, we have our board breaking component. Some might be like, well, we do this for board breaking, and well, we do this, and, you know, do you do a fitness thing? We don't do a fitness thing. We do a fitness thing. What do you do for fitness? Like, we get asked all the time about, well, just recently, this is the first time we did it in this
This
test.
way. Yeah.
But we get asked, well, I've been getting asked, actually quite a few people on Instagram actually have been messaging me because I posted about our fitness test.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a fitness test for hours. I didn't have a fitness test. Did you?
No.
Right.
Mm-mm.
I actually think it's a really important piece.
It is.
There's a period where I didn't think it was an important piece, but I can go into that, and I might actually later on.
And our fitness test has changed, like,
Right.
in the last 5, 6, 7 years. Every time that
Yeah.
we've done a black belt test, the fitness test has been different.
Yep.
And that's okay because we've found, you know, the right challenge for the group of testers, or
Right.
we've, you know, decided that, you know, this is a good measure, or now this is a good measure, and they've all been good. They've just all been different. And
Yep.
yeah, this one seems to have gotten a lot of attention, but it was a good test
Yeah.
for this group. This is what they needed.
And so that's just it. So we did, our fitness test was the 302. And for those of you that don't know what the 302 is, the 302 is a 1 mile run, 100 push-ups, 100 squat thrusts, 100 crawl outs, followed by another 1 mile run. We give them 75 minutes to complete it. Their first time, we actually gave them unlimited time. They could have done it in 2 hours. They could have done it in 3 hours. It didn't actually matter. They just had to complete the entire 302 in that afternoon. I was going to wait all day for them.
And so we do the pre-fitness test 6 weeks
That's
prior to their black belt test. So they do the pre-fitness, and then they complete their final fitness the day before their test.
That's something that we've always kind of done, though. When we started doing
Yeah.
fitness testing, was we always had 2. We always had 1, and you had to make the improvement on the second one. We always had that.
Yes.
This one here, like I said, was the 302. And I think the big question I've been getting about the 302 is like, well, where's the kicking? Where's the punching? Why aren't they doing that? And the 302 is actually one, it is a test of your physical fitness.
Yes.
1 mile
endurance.
run, 2 mile run, well, total 2 mile run. I don't like to run. I hate running. We're doing a marathon on June 4th. I hate running. So for anybody who sits there and whines and complains about running, I hate running too. But I do it because it's difficult and I struggle with it. So I do it because, well, it's hard. It's difficult.
Yes.
But that's one piece. The 100 push-ups. Well, do they have to do it in a row? No, they don't have to do it in a row. I can't do 100 push-ups straight in a
either.
row. So it's not in a row. It's on their own time. I do sets of 10, right? So like everybody did a little bit different. These squat thrusts, if you don't know what a squat thrust is, it's a burpee without a push-up, I guess, is the easiest way to explain it. Right? A burpee, we go down for a push-up.
It's like the bottom half of the burpee.
Right. You squat down, you kick your feet back, you tuck them back in, you stand back up. You don't jump back up, you just stand back up. Then the crawl outs. Squat down, crawl your hands out, crawl them back in.
Yeah,
come
crawl
back.
out to like a push-up position
Right.
and then crawl back.
And a 100 of each of those. And then you have to finish it off with that little bookmark right at that little bookend right at the end, and do another 1 mile run. And it's a very difficult one. So what I do like about it is it's not just a physical challenge, but it is also very mentally challenging. It is mentally, I would almost say mentally harder than it is physically. Like it is like you got to be fit to do it.
Yeah.
But we're also talking about people who are testing for their black belts.
Right.
So let's
It is physically hard,
course.
but like the mental part of it, that has to kick in more because, and just the repetitive nature, like you're talking about 100 reps of those things, right? And then a 1 mile run, that's not a short distance by any means. So like, it's just very repetitive. And so your mental game has to be on point in order to achieve that within the time limit, right?
But also that what I do like about the 302 in terms of what we do for the fitness test, why we do the 302, and again, the questions we get about it, why I do like it is, what is martial arts training throughout your years? It's repetitive. It is exhausting. And how many times do you think these 7 who started with us wanted to quit? How many... All 7 of them, here's the funny, all 7 of them wanted to quit that fitness test. All 7 of them. At one point throughout it, they wanted to quit it. Before they even started, they wanted to quit it. They didn't even want to do it. It was, oh, I have to do that many? Oh my God. It's how you put your mind into it.
Yeah.
But what happened when they got.
That's why it was such a good fitness test for this group, is not even for the fitness part, but for the mental piece, because that 6 weeks prior at the pre-fitness test, we presented them with, this is what we're doing. And meanwhile, they had been preparing for the previous fitness test, right? So the previous fitness test, there was push-ups and kicking and all this. There was a bunch of stuff it was a good test, but they had been preparing for that. So then when we presented them with something brand new, and like the wide eyes, right? Like they're like, oh no, like that's going to be tough. And that's why it was so good for this group. Like I mentioned, when there was a lot of young kids, or not young kids, but teenagers testing for their black belt. This was such like the perfect test for them. It was just to see like if they could turn it on, if they could flip the switch, if they could connect with what they were doing, why they were doing it, and, how badly did they want their black belt. That made it so real for them.
Absolutely. And it was so, the first one was hard. Like it was really, really hard. But again, because mentally it was like they didn't want to do it. Now, a couple of them, one in particular, really flipped halfway through. And this young man was just like, okay, I just gotta go. And he just did it. And that's what our training is too.
That's what it's about.
Like that's exactly what our training is. Like you get to green belt and you either decide, well, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm doing a side kick and I don't think I'm getting that much better at it. And it's getting really exhausting doing the same thing. But you either flip the switch and push through that struggle, and you overcome the adversity and the discipline and all of this stuff, and you keep pushing through, and you flip the switch and you keep going. You eventually find yourself with these 7 people testing for your black belt. Because we were trying to talk about this before, and we were just guessing on numbers, right?
Yeah,
so we had 7 people test.
Illustrate the magnitude of this. Yeah.
Right. And so what we were trying to determine was how many people started with these people and how many tested, right? So we tested 7, and we were trying to think of how many people have started with them. And we're trying to determine it. We have no accurate way, but we were just guessing. We said, well, how do we figure that out? Well, they don't have to test. They don't have to start
the exact same day, but like, in the same time period.
Right.
So within
somebody
4 months.
2 months before and somebody 2 months after. Well, if we were to just guess, 20 to 30 people might start in a 2 month prior to a 2 month post, of somebody starting, that one person. 20 to 30 people. Right. Times that by 7, who started in and around the same time as these particular ones.
That's right.
This one young man who started in September 2015. How many people started just before him? How many people just started just after him? Okay, the one who started in November, 20 to 30 people.
Yeah.
You kind of figure it out. We were guessing. We're just guessing on these numbers. So we could easily pull this up. We track all of this stuff. We just didn't look this up, but it is, I think, something that we're going to dig into.
Best guess would be
about
that
200.
200 people started with these 7.
People.
200 people started with them. There definitely was not 200 people testing 2 weeks ago.
Right. And now some people,
are still
I
coming.
started with them, but I haven't tested yet because I took a month off, or I failed this test and I had to retest this one, or whatever. And that's fine. We're again just giving some base numbers, but I actually think that it's probably close to this. I would guess. 150 to 200 people. We're talking 3%. 3.5%, 4% of the people who start in Taekwondo, or even martial arts in general, finish
or achieve their black belt. This wasn't the right word. Not finish, but achieve the black belt.
That's
like
right.
They earn their black belt. 3% of people who start earn their black belt.
That's right, and that's something. So like if you're one of the 7 people who tested, or you're a black belt yourself and who is listening to this, understand the pride you should feel in that accomplishment. If you are somebody who's like, I got to my red belt and quit, well, it's never too late to start and become one of those 3%. It's never too late.
And we had one of our testers
One
is
of
an
them was.
example of that, is that,
He
you
got
know,
his blue or something like
yeah,
that.
he started not with us at a different school, got his blue belt, and then he joined us a few years ago
Mm-hmm.
at a blue belt and started working towards his black belt. So
That's right.
it can happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other 6 were white to black with us, right?
Correct.
And then the other one, mid-20s,
Mm-hmm.
mid-late 20s. Yeah, he was, a blue belt, and then he came back, and now he's here. So, like, that being said, well, I did start, and then I quit. I can't really go back and be one of course you can. Quit thinking like that. Like, get your butt back and
Yeah.
start actually training and become one of the 3%. Because it is a big deal. So, like I said, if you're one of the people who just tested, understand the magnitude of what you just accomplished. Remember the small percentage you are of people who actually finished and completed this thing. Like, it's a big deal, and it's something that you should be extremely proud of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's huge. Just even thinking about some of the people I do know personally who were color belts with me, you know, they didn't get their black belts.
Yeah.
Like, I do know a few people,
Yeah.
not anymore, you know, but
The day of the black belt test, I remember, you know, the test went on and got to see them all kind of struggle in certain areas. And then at the end, they all received their black belts. And when they were receiving their black belts, it was like, I felt proud of them, but I was more feeling like their pride. You know what? I don't know how to explain it, but like, it was like, oh, I just felt so excited for them to be feeling what they were feeling in that moment, because I just remember the excitement and the pride that that I felt when I got my black belt. And so I was so excited, like I was proud of them, but I was so excited for them to feel that pride and excitement in themselves. Like, it was just really cool to see.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I loved that.
yeah, and that's just it. Cause there is something about like energy,
Yes.
you know, in the room.
Yeah.
Like, there's something about that, you know, when you are in the same room, you can feel negative energy. You can feel positive energy. You can feel anxious energy.
Yeah.
You can feel, you know, all kinds of energy and emotions and stuff like that. And in that room at that time, you've got parents, family, friends, instructors, black belts, who are all there, you know, and we're all kind of just proud of these individuals. They're all proud of themselves. And yeah, the feeling in the room was, it's really unique, and it's something really special to be part of.
Yeah.
And it's definitely one that, like, you know, I want everybody to be part of.
Yes.
Right? Like, I want everybody when you start to feel that. And that was something.
But that's what we were talking about is, you know, so we have 200 people that started and 7 of them achieved their black belt. And that's what we were talking about is like those other 193, like we put the same heart and soul into those students. And it's because we want them to feel and achieve what these 7 individuals just achieved.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's just it. Like it is. Everybody that starts, like, it's hard for parents or individuals. You know, if you're a teenager, if you're an adult, to really see that in yourself. Like, yeah, like that'll be me one day, and all those tests. It's hard to. It's really difficult to. I see it like every time, like, you know, we have new people start. All I can see is like, man, like the potential. You know, and I don't mean potential in like, wow, they're so skilled. I mean like the potential in who they are.
yeah,
as
their
an
growth
individual.
and development as a human.
That's right.
That comes through martial arts is
Yeah.
different. Like there's a different feeling about this than anything else.
That's right. And so that's why it is like, you know, listen, people, well, obviously, you know, 150, 200 people started and these 7, so people quit.
Yeah.
And it's like people, you know, I don't get hung up on it in a certain sense of like, it's more like sad because you're like, oh, you know, if only you knew
what was in
you-
store for you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think that's the hardest part is when someone quits martial arts and maybe they intend to come back, maybe not. It's harder to come back after you've quit, but that like when someone does quit, that's where it's like, man, I don't want you to quit because I want you to feel what's in store for you. Like these 7 people got to experience that a couple weeks ago, right? Like,
yeah. And that's just it. You want like you want everybody. Now, there is something about that though. Like, well, not everybody deserves to be like, you've got to put in the work. So
exactly.
when I do, say I want you all, I truly do. Like, I really do want everybody, but you got to put in the work.
Well, and it's an understanding that not everyone will. Like, not everyone will learn to be disciplined to put in that work.
Yeah.
And yeah, even though, that's our goal. I mean, a big part of our goal is to how do we teach people that level of discipline and understanding that most people won't achieve that level of discipline.
That's right.
But I think that's what drives us is because we want to increase that number that we can teach that to, right?
But and then even like afterwards, so we've done the fitness test. We the cool part was we did the fitness test the day before testing. So we did Saturday. We did the second part of the fitness test because, like I said, they had to run the 302 once. They had to run the 302 again. That one there they had to do under 75 minutes.
Yes.
If they didn't, then I shook their hand and said, "Don't show up tomorrow."
That energy on that fitness test
That was a different
different
level.
Oh yeah, like it was so crazy.
Yep.
Like, and
parents, like I had 2 of the moms. They were like,
crying at the
and
end,
not like, "Oh, what did you do, Mike?" No, like they were like so happy. And listen, I get into a different mode when I'm on that floor. Well, not a different mode. I think I bring exactly who I want and what they need.
Right.
And so when I'm, if you looked at it from the outside, I'm yelling at them, pushing them. Like the parents were like, "Thank you." Like they were in tears because it was so impactful, and the kids were just like they were jacked.
Yes.
And then they're all together, they're all hugging, they're all
it's so special.
Yeah.
And like honestly, all of them could have ran a second 302 right after and crushed it.
And that's the point of doing it this way, was that way they could actually see what they're capable of.
Yes,
and prepared.
And that's the proof is that yes, it's a physical test, but it's more mental than physical. And so that's what I mean is like after they got it done and they all all got it within that 75
They
minutes.
knew they were allowed to show up the next day.
Yeah, like they could have ran a second one and just fine, right?
Yep.
Because like the physical is only so much part of it. It's more the mental game there. So
And so that was cool. So we did that. Then we did the test day, and that was a long day in itself. I mean, it's a black belt test. Like we're trying to do everything or as much as we can in that day. Like it's not like just a color belt test where we're gonna kind of test you on the certain things that we're working on in that particular time. This is use this word, culmination, culmination,
cumulative.
Cumulative. I don't know. It's a whole thing together. You put it all together, right? Everything gets put together into this, and you could get asked to do all of your patterns or 4 of them.
Yeah.
There's a base number that I do watch, but I did actually make them all do, I think, 2 or 3 extras. Like there was only, I want to say they got graded on 5, and then I made them go up and do 2 or 3 extras that were grouped. Like they had to do it all together and stay together. And it was just sort of like this different little like, here's a little extra for you. For you. Remember that. Whenever an instructor makes you do something, it is for you. It is not to you. Just remember that. So every time you're like, "Oh man, it's all for you." Okay? Just remember that. But we did that. We did the board breaking, or we did that. We did the self-defense, prearranged, or we did the prearranged self-defense. I can't remember exactly that order. Then we did the sparring, board breaking, questions at the very end. And then, of course, we dismissed them for a little bit. We added everything up, kind of looked at their marks and looked at everything and determined. And they all passed. That's the end of the story. Is they all passed. Everybody passed on that one there, which was really good because it would have been really awkward had somebody failed.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You don't get invited to test for your black belt unless the instructors think that you are absolutely capable of
Right.
doing that.
But I've had
But there's been, like, even with this group, we talked about it beforehand, but like there is always this shred of, or this ounce of doubt, because they
still have to bring it.
They are capable.
Yeah.
They have learned everything. They've put in the training. They've done the mental preparation, everything. But they still have to bring it on that day.
Yeah.
And so if someone has, waivers in their mental state, or, like, they still could show up for black belt tests and not perform.
That's right.
So there was doubt,
Yeah.
and it's so awesome to see them all work through, like, all struggled in some
Oh, of
areas
course,
of their tests.
absolutely.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Whether it was the fitness test or the patterns or the self-defense or the sparring or the board breaking or whatever, they all had pieces that they had to overcome and push through.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is, cool about the testing is it's, it is just everything coming together and determine, can you push through the difficult moments? Can you actually push through and continue when a particular subject didn't quite go your way and you didn't do as good as you thought you would, or you bombed on something? We had a couple people had to restart their patterns, because nerves start taking
Yeah.
over. So what can you do in those moments? Can you stay, calm, cool, and collected and do the pattern? If you restart, can you overcome the idea of like, oh, I had to restart? Luckily, they all could. Like, the ones that had to restart, they were able to. Oh, right. Okay.
yeah,
Now, had they not been able to restart,
this would be a different podcast episode.
very different podcast episode.
No, but they all passed, and it was just an amazing day all around.
That's right.
So they all earned their first degree black belt.
That's right.
Now what happens?
Well, that's just it. And so that's actually something that we had one of the boys, one of the young men, he was actually our I believe our youngest one. And we were walking around, him and I, around the dojang after he completed his fitness test. And he did his afterwards. But the comment he makes to me is and this is again just, he goes, oh, finally a black belt.
Finally a black.
Finally a black belt. And it is like, absolutely. He's very proud. He's excited. He's like, I'm finally a black belt. I'm finally officially a black belt. I finished that. It's done. I am officially, I'm finally a black belt. And just with the experience and what I've gone through and where I've been. So dude, you've always been a black belt in a way. Like, you now have the black belt, okay? You've earned that right to wear the black belt. But what are you going to do now, going forward, to live up to the standards,
Right.
the expectations, the examples?
Yeah, that's one thing I think about is like, so you earned the actual black belt.
Right.
But what are you going to do to earn your black belt every single
Every
day?
day.
Every single day going forward.
That's right. Because I know for me, and I shared this with him, I have no problem sharing this. I'm going to share it right here too, is there are times where I had my black belt, especially in my 20s, where I was not a black belt. Like, I was not a black belt. Like, I had a black belt, but I did not live up to the standards and the expectations and an actual example to people. Now, I was horrible, but I just wasn't living up to what I should have been living up to. And I fell off, whether it was like, I'm in my 20s, whether I'm partying too much, drinking too much, eating shitty food, like all of those things. Like, there was times where I just was not actually a black belt.
Right.
I didn't have the black belt morals or, thankfully I do now and everything. But
Yeah.
like, there's definitely been times where, and I know people too. I know color belts who are more black belt than some black
Yeah.
belts that I know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
right
absolutely.
now, today, I know people who, you know what? You've got one.
And same goes for me. There was times, I earned my black belt 24 years ago. A lot has happened in 24 years. And there were times that I know I didn't live up to the black belt. And I think, now that's what I want all of these black belts to
Right.
know, is like really earn it every single day. And, you know, now I feel really comfortable in saying that, you know, I strive to earn my black belt every day.
That's right.
And, you know, even in the evening is like a constant reminder, right? I put on my black belt every evening,
right.
and that's did I earn it today? And what do I need to do out on the floor to earn it today? So,
That's right.
and you sometimes need those instructors and coaches and allies and things to push you and just make you better. And yeah, I mean, but also life happens.
Of course.
Right.
And nobody's
there's,
perfect.
and so I don't want black belts to see like, oh, if you take a day off, like you don't get your black belt back. That's not what I mean, because life is going to happen and there are ebbs and flows in our life. And, you know, you might be training 4 days a week and then you got to take a couple weeks off, right? Like that is okay. I'm not saying that. It's just, yeah, how are you going to make sure that your beliefs and values and attitude and actions all align with what it means to be a black belt?
That's right. And what it means to you to be a black belt. You know, like
Yeah.
what does that mean to you? Does it mean, you know, being disciplined? Does it mean going to the dojang every day and training? Maybe that's what that means to you,
Yeah.
right? So like, but what does it mean and how are you going to live up to that? Because like I said, that's the big piece. And when you earn that black belt, you should absolutely be proud. But now it's like, now what? Now what's the next step? What do you do? Because when you get to wear that, when you get to be looked at as somebody who's like, wow, like they have a black belt, you are held to this, you know, expectation and this example. And it's one that you shouldn't take lightly. And it's certainly one that you should definitely go, what am I going to do today to be that black belt?
Yeah. Earn
You
it
know,
every day.
Am I going to hold the door open for somebody? Like, am I going to be a courteous person? Am I going to, when I'm at the grocery store, put away your shopping cart? What are you going to do to be a good person who has integrity, you know, who has a moral compass?
And
you
you
know?
went through all of that hard work with, you know, perseverance and indomitable spirit, some of the tenets of Taekwondo. How are you going to apply those same values and actions to all areas of your life?
That's right. Yep, absolutely. And yeah, it is,
And self-control. Oh man, we could just keep going
Yeah.
on and on. But like self-control, right? Like you showed incredible self-control leading up to your black belt test, during your black belt test. And now how are you going to keep self-control, you know, and self-respect
That's right.
like at the forefront in everything that you do?
That's right. Yeah. And that's just it. So like, you know, even though you might be like thinking right now, if you're listening to this as we kind of wrap this all up, if you're like, man, I don't have my black belt yet, but you know what? There are still things that you can do that you can live up to those examples. You can start, you know, by having some self-control, having some discipline, having some focus, having some courtesy, having some integrity. Like those are all traits that a black belt possess. And even a color belt who's just, you can possess those things too. Like you can have those.
Yes.
So you don't have to be like, well, I don't have a black belt, I don't need to have those things yet. No, you still have those things. You develop those things over time and then earn your black belt and then live up to those things.
Yeah, and I think when I first got my black belt, like we said, you're super excited, you're super proud, you're like on cloud nine, and we've seen that already with the new black belts coming in for classes these past couple weeks. Like they are on top of the world, and I love it. And dang it, you deserve it. You deserve to have that celebration, and I certainly
Yes.
did as well.
Of course.
There is going to be this moment, because it happened with me, that I had that realization that, dang, I am a black belt,
Yep.
and I got to frickin' earn it every day now.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So earn it every day, every single day, at home, at the dojang, wherever you go, live up to that. And you know, now it's like, what else do you do? What's your next goal? You know, like what are you now going to be training for? So anyway, we wanted to do this kind of special episode for all of those people who just tested for their black belt, because again, it's a
Huge
exciting
achievement.
day. It's a big achievement, and we wanted to kind of honor them by kind of talking about our experience with our black belt test, and of course their experience from our view, you know, a little bit, and be able to share that with everybody here who listens and maybe goes, that'll be my kid one day. That'll be me one day. You know, like Because any one of you listening here, if you're not a black belt yet, just think, you, by pushing through and being one of the 3%, you could also be there, feeling the same pride, the same joy, and the same accomplishment that all 7 of those ones did. Anyway, guys, we thank you guys so much. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody that you do know who might find some value out of this, or leave us a review, good or bad. Leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys. And if there's any kind of episodes or stuff you'd like to hear from us, please drop them in the comments or send us a message. We'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to Off the Mat. My name's Josh Dumlin, and this is
Nicole Stratichuk.
And we'll see you guys or talk to you guys next time.